Привет, everyone. Доброе утро. My name is Alina. Actually, I learned recently that I have been pronouncing my own name wrong. How embarrassing is that? Episode 2 of Honoring My Kokoshnik. It's a big day. I'm excited about this episode. Thank you for tuning in. I want to stop right here and just say thank you to everybody for your support, your ongoing support that you've shown me, sending me messages and wanting to connect and have conversation around this because it's very important. So yeah, once again, I just want to say Большое спасибо. Thank you very much. It means so much to me, and I hope that we can continue doing this and grow the following and, just receive more connection from this. That is my hope for this podcast, is all about connection, transparency, communication, and having a community. Let's get into it. Welcome to Honoring My Kokoshnik, a podcast where I share the story of my roots, my journey, and the beautiful yet complex layers of my identity. I was born in Russia in 1994, and just a few years later, my world shifted in the most profound way by becoming a part of a family, a culture, and a land far from the one where I started. But my story isn't just about being adopted. It's about bridging two worlds and honoring the heritage that shaped me. So sit back and let me take you on this journey. A journey that's not just mine, but one that many of us share in different ways. Because as I've learned over the years, honoring my kokoshnik is more than just wearing it. It's about understanding what it means and how to carry that part of me into the world. So without further ado, I've got a lot to talk about. I've done quite a bit of research in terms of not a lot of sleeping, a lot of browsing the internet, a lot of watching videos, a lot of scrolling through TikTok to see what I can find. In this episode, I talk about the orphanage, the city I'm from, and just what I remember. And to be honest, I don't remember anything. I'm sorry, guys, I don't. But I did do some research, and so here's what I've found. Khabarovsk is on the far east portion of Russia, southeast, far southern, east, south, farther, how do you say that? Southeast portion of Russia. It's one of the biggest cities, actually, in far east Russia. It caps out, I think, at 600,000 for the population. It's gone up, I think, since 1990, since I was there. Maybe 100,000, if the data I looked at is correct. Not too sure how correct it was, but that's what it showed. I don't know much about Khabarovsk, honestly, because I literally just started researching it this week. I never really had much interest, because from what I'd seen in home videos from when my parents went to Russia, it was just a whole bunch of dilapidated areas and buildings, and it just did not look welcoming, inviting at all, in the least. Didn't want anything to do with it. I was like, okay. But I've been looking at videos and pictures recently, and oh my goodness, I'm blown away by the beauty of some of the buildings and architecture. Oh my goodness. And just on the river, the view, breathtaking. I need to talk about the cathedrals there. There are, I think, 3 main cathedrals there, from what I've seen, that are just breathtaking. There's one at the very end of the city on the river, and I don't know what it's called off the top of my head. Something Transfiguration. Giant. You can see it from the whole other side of the city. It's huge. It's beautiful, and I'm definitely going to be putting a picture of it. Maybe in this little picture frame I have here that's empty. It's a beautiful picture frame I have next to me, but if you're not watching the video, it's a picture frame that's empty. It has no picture in it. I might put it in that picture frame, or I'll put it in a frame on the wall. I don't know, but I'm definitely going to put a picture of it in this room for sure. And then there's one it's taller, and it's got more peak. I don't know how to describe cathedrals, but it's got very beautiful color blues. And then there's another one. It's smaller than the Transfiguration Church, and it's named after somebody that was canonized, but I cannot think of the name. Savoy, I don't know. Something Sarov. If you're interested in seeing these, I'm gonna post pictures in the video. Go ahead and just Google cathedrals in Khabarovsk, and you'll see the three I'm talking about for sure. I would love to be able to visit Khabarovsk now in my later life, but I'm not too sure with, political standpoints right now, if that's the best option, so we'll see one day. I don't know. Would be nice now. Now that I know what it looks like, I'm interested. I was in a children's home number 1 to be specific. They called it children's home and not orphanage. I don't know the exact reason of that, but children's home. They don't like to call it an orphanage, so they refer to it as either a baby home or children's home. As far as I know, I was in children's home number 1 in Khabarovsk. I've tried to find information on it, and I haven't found much. I'm not going to give up. I think I can. I just really have to persevere. I think I found the website for it, which, if that's the correct one, I'm going to try to email them and see if there's any information anybody there has about anything that took place in the 90s, My birth mom, I don't even know if her information is correct. What's wild, I was trying to, connect the dots and do some research, and the address she gave for her residence is literally the same street address as this children's home number 1 in Khabarovsk. So that tells me either two things. The first, she was, I don't know what's true and what's not true. If she was really 25 years old, that would mean she was maybe a caretaker at the children's home, or a volunteer, and she got pregnant, or she herself was a child in the children's home and lied about her age. So she might have been a whole lot younger than what she said, because she said she was 25. I don't know. I just don't know what to believe. It's too much of a coincidence that the address is the same. Something's there. I need to look more into that. Information on these papers that could be so inaccurate, it just makes me wonder. I've heard of stories where kids' birthdays are wrong. They just made up a birthday, or they just made up a name. Like I said in my last episode, maybe my nurses named me. Maybe this isn't really my parents' name, and that's why I can't find anything on them. So that was an interesting to realize with the address. Do I remember anything from the children's home? Unfortunately, I do not. I was there until I was 3, and a lot of people I would say remember their earliest memories, I would say, are, 2 to 3. But no, I don't remember anything from being there. I want to say I slightly have some kind of vision, familiar feeling of being in a dark lit place. Not super dark. There were lights, but it just wasn't good lighting. That's basically all I can remember. And what I have from that time is 3 pictures total of me and 1 video. That's all I have from my first 3 years of life. One of the pictures I was maybe 1.5 or 2. The other 2 pictures are in the same moment, just 2 snapshots. I was maybe 2. And let me tell you, I was mean mugging. You're taught in Russia not to smile, not to be outwardly friendly. Keep a stone face. I did that. I still do that. If you want to see RBF, I got a picture for you. And it cracks me up. I love looking at it. I think it's hilarious. And it's funny to look at my expressions now, because a lot of my expressions now, I see myself in that picture. I compare it and I'm like, there's no way that's not me. Nobody could have a doubt. I like to think of it as my signature look, is my stoic mean mug in Russia. Oh man, you can make a meme out of it. You really could make a meme out of it, I swear. I'm surprised the meme hasn't been made out of it. My earliest memories, don't really have any in the children's home. I was adopted in August. We were put into school, I want to say, in that following September. I started preschool that following September, and I will tell you, I remember my first preschool teacher. She was amazing, the most nurturing person I've ever met. I will never forget her. She made me feel welcome, acknowledged, cared for, warmth from her. She was an amazing person. I don't know what she's doing right now these days. I did reach out to her on Facebook. Well, I didn't reach out, but I sent her a friend request. I don't think she knows me by my current Facebook name. It would be amazing to reconnect with her. And I'm going to talk about that later in this episode, why her impact on my life was so important. We'll get to that soon. Basically, there's 2 options for conditions of a Russian orphanage in the 90s. You either had a children's home that was supplied with food, water, clothing, toys, basic necessities. Kids could play together. Or you just didn't have a lot of that, and children's homes were struggling to get by with supplies and what they needed. Low funding, etc. But in any case, you didn't have individualized care for these kids. There was no nurture. There was no responsiveness, responsive caregiving. There was no like conversation from caregiver to child. So that relationship was never formed. There was no soothing, meaningful interactions. A lot of stories say that the caregivers were just always very stone-faced, not much expression coming from them, not really even looking at the kids, talking to each other while the kids are off doing something else, just maybe even just sitting there, not even, playing because of the conditions. In terms of the caregivers, there was overstaffing. Or no, sorry, not overstaffing, there was understaffing. Ah, gosh, the craziest thing I read was children, I think before the age of 3, or at the age of 3, or even, maybe it was 2, see 300 caregivers in their life, I think is what the study said. 300 different caregivers. It might have been 300 to 600 if I'm remembering correctly. By the age of 3. Can you imagine that? I can't even imagine that. Oh, man. Long hours. Maybe 2 straight days. Feeding babies is very, very rushed. I think that's why in the video I have of me eating, I'm eating so fast because that's just how you did it. I'm going to put that in the video version of this so that you guys can see if you guys haven't seen it on my TikTok. Little funding and resources. Especially with it being Khabarovsk. Khabarovsk was not a prominent city. It was one of the biggest in the Far East, but not as prominent as like Moscow or St. Petersburg. With it being so far off from those big cities, of course, funding and resources was less. There are a lot of articles I've read and a lot of reading I did. And I saw something else in something I read. I'm going to post links to all the research I'm grabbing from. The ones that I found more striking are the ones published by Human Rights Watch. There were 2 articles that I read that... The first one I read made me bawl like a baby. That was maybe a couple months ago I read that. And I've just never really dug deeper into it, and I did, and I was just like, I can't imagine that being my first 3 years of life. And then the second one I read last night, it said children in a Russian orphanage or children's home cannot be adopted, cannot be even considered for adoption by a foreign family until after they've been seen and rejected by 3 Russian families, couples. I'm already abandoned and don't have any prospects for me, right? At birth. And then you introduce these kids to 3 couples that could possibly be their new family. No, we don't like them. No, not interested. 3 times. If that's true, oh my goodness. I was only 3 when I was adopted. That's so sad. If you're interested in reading either of those, I'm going to have them in the description or show notes. I don't really know how show notes work, but I'll figure it out. All of the resources and everything I'm citing will be in the notes for you guys to look at on your own time. Last night I watched a YouTube video of an older gentleman that had conducted a study in St. Petersburg about the effects of implementing trained caregivers to have a more family-like approach in their caregiving, and it showed the benefits for these children behavior-wise, physical growth-wise, emotional-wise, from 18 months and after adoption, the benefits it had. I'm going to link that if you guys want to watch that. That's an hour-long YouTube video, but it was really, really good. I have education and background, specifically in early childhood education. That's where my passion is. And I think it stems from knowing what the conditions were like in the orphanage I lived in. And then I also want to talk about, last night I came across this article called 4 of the Worst Orphanages in Recent History. And this was done September of 2013. First one, Tekawitha Orphanage, somewhere in the USA, from the 1940s to 1970s. The second one, sorry, my watch. Second one, Nanning Orphanage in, I think, China in the 1990s. Number 2. Number 3, Ungurani Home for the Incurable in Romania. And that was 2006. Romania, there's a lot of bad stories about, unfortunately. Number 4, Mazanovsky Orphanage, Russia, 2013. And I'm going to read this blurb here because the last part of it is relevant to what I'm talking about today. The Mazanovsky Orphanage gained notoriety this past May after footage emerged showing orphans being brutally beaten. In the clip, 2 adolescent carers are seen whipping and kicking 7 young boys. The video, believed to have been filmed by one of the offenders on their mobile phone, was anonymously released to the local media. This is not the first time that Russian orphanages have been accused of systemic abuses. Some of the Mazanovsky staff claim that their earlier warnings about the abuse were ignored by authorities. Meanwhile, orphanages in other areas make headlines too. A month before the Mazanovsky video, 2 nurses were arrested at an orphanage in the Khabarovsk region for beating 3 young children so severely that all 3, ranging in age from 7 months to 3 years, were hospitalized. When asked about the abuse by another employee at the Mazanovsky orphanage, one of the offenders allegedly said, "I was beaten in the orphanage, and I'm going to beat them too." Wild. So those are younger caregivers, but it just goes to show, like, maybe they were in the orphanage in the 90s, and if they were beaten, like, that's what the conditions were. There's not a lot of good stories about the caregiving in Russian orphanages. And that was 2013. That wasn't even in the 90s. So it just goes to show what the conditions with the caregivers had to have been like. Not great. Some of the behaviors that were shown from children in the homes, stemming from being in the homes after adoption. I read stories that kids kind of have to fight for their survival in the children's home because it's the hierarchy of what kids have been there the longest. So, the older kids are beating kids up and taking over, taking control. Food was so scarce and just a hot commodity. Everybody was trying to survive off of food. Kids generally would, whatever food they could find, they'd stash it, they'd hoard it, they'd hide it. Later in life, it was hard for them to break those habits. They would, be in their adoptive family, stealing food, lying, hiding food for later, taking it to their... You know what's crazy? I did that. Maybe not to that extent, and I didn't even realize this was stemmed probably from that. I was 3 in the orphanage, so I probably picked up that behavior, at least to some degree. When I was adopted, I did have some trouble stealing a can of Coke, taking it to my room, hiding it, because I didn't think I'd be able to have it. I knew if I asked my parents, I'd say no, but my thought was, I'm just going to take it and stash it and hoard it. And I know for a fact it was an ongoing problem. I'm going to be a little vulnerable and honest with some things on here today, but yeah. Looking back on that, I'm like, yeah, why did I do that? Like, it was not that serious. It was a cherry Coke. I remember I found it in the basement. I was like, ooh, cherry Coke. That sounds good. I'm going to want that. I'm a big fiend on soda. I remember hiding it behind the curtain on the windowsill in my room. My parents always found the stuff I took, too. They always found it. I wasn't that good at it, I guess. Another thing that I did carry over after adoption. This one's a little more vulnerable and sad. I don't tell a lot of people this. Maybe a few people I've told in my life. Children in orphanages, like, they don't have moms or any nurturing caregiver to rock them to sleep. So, they self-soothe. So you'll see kids in the children's home just rocking themselves, sitting there rocking, and it becomes regular for them, their way to regulate their nervous system, I think. Nervous system, is that right? I did that for the longest time. I had a lot of trouble getting to sleep, even after adoption, all through my childhood, junior high years, high school. I'm a night owl, I don't know. It took me hours to get to sleep, and I always, I remember rocking myself to sleep and listening to music, and I was so used to it. It was so comfortable for me. I felt weird not doing it. It felt like I was forcing myself not to. Eventually, I would fall asleep. I did it in the car, on car rides, for the longest time. I remember the day I really realized I needed to stop doing that was when I saw people making fun of me in the car next to us. If only they knew, right? It sucks. People don't realize people's stories and they just assume and judge and make fun of. I don't want that to be me, but it is. Rocking was a big thing for me. Behaviors aren't random. Behaviors stem from something, always. Yeah, people don't realize that. In the video I watched that was an hour long, the guy said that many kids in the homes have undifferentiated friendliness, something like that, where you go up to just any stranger and are very, very welcoming, very, very friendly. And that's not normal. But he said when he would visit the homes, the orphanages, kids would flock to him that didn't even know him. And personally, I've worked with kids in foster care. I've seen that, and it is worrisome because you don't want them to just trust anybody, because the world we live in, you can't just trust anybody. But they are so eager, they're so deprived of that attention and love, they'll go to the extreme to seek it out. And I've seen that in a little boy I worked with. The nicest, such a smart little boy. I think he was put into foster care when he was 1. And at first he was quiet when he came to the center. But when he opened up, the most affable kid I've ever seen. He had some behaviors, for sure. I wouldn't put it past him to just, be outside, walk into his car with his caregiver after school, seeing somebody in the parking lot and just going up to them and talking to them. He'd probably even go home with them if they offered. And that's scary. And also, appearance. If you're watching the video, look at me. If you're not, let me describe. I'm 30 years old. I'm maybe 5'2", 5'1", 5'2". I weighed myself just the other day. I weigh 93 pounds. I cannot gain weight to save my life. I don't know why. I eat normal. I'd say I eat a lot. Lately, every day I've been eating pasta with bolognese. I don't know how to say it, sauce. I've been eating pierogies with the potatoes, cheesy potatoes on the inside. I've been eating the Kievs with broccoli and the chicken. Yeah, I've been eating that as my dinner every day. I've been eating 2 peanut butter and jelly sandwiches at work for lunch every day, popcorn every day, and an apple with peanut butter every day. Do I eat breakfast? I don't really eat breakfast. Oh, breakfast is a Snickers bar every day. So I generally eat the same thing every day. Can't gain weight. I've actually lost weight in the past couple months because I think I was like at 95 or 94. Now I'm at 93. The most I've ever weighed is 110. That was in high school. And that's when I was really working on gaining weight because I wanted to give blood. And the day I go to give blood, they tell me I didn't weigh enough. And I gained 10 pounds just so I could give blood. I don't know how I did it, but I did it. I think it was working out and gaining muscle. I was determined to give blood, but nope, still wasn't able to. For me, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's because I started my life out so malnourished that my metabolism never bounced back after being adopted, because I can eat and eat and eat, and I don't gain a thing. What is that? Is that genetic? I don't know. I'm not anemic. I got my blood work done. There's no health issues that I know of. I'm a pretty healthy 30-year-old. I live a pretty good life, I'd say. I had a great childhood. I wouldn't trade it for the world. I played outside all the time. My parents were good to me. I had basically everything I wanted. I was probably spoiled, a little privileged. I know what my passion and my purpose in life is. It's just a matter of finding a good environment for that. And that's the hard part. I think the thing I struggle most with is just, self-identity and building trusting relationships with people. Like, I have a handful of really good friends that I can count on my one hand. You don't need a whole lot of friends, just a few select ones. Quality over quantity. As far as, romantic relationships go, I do struggle with that more. I don't know what that's all about. When I was younger, I definitely would say I was anxious attachment style. But I've learned a lot. I've done a lot of reading and learning about, attachment styles, and I know myself better, and I've got more confidence in myself that's changed. I think I'm getting to be more avoidant in some instances. That's taking more looking into. Right now I'm kind of on a learning journey, so I'm learning the language. I'm learning Russian. What I've learned so far, I know Привет, меня зовут Alena Sergeyevna, and on that, rather than my name being pronounced Alina, the proper Russian way to pronounce it is Alena. That's hard to explain to somebody here, I think. They see Alena. They're not going to say Alyona. They are not. The most they're going to do is call me Elena. Not a fan of that either. I mean, it's probably closer than Alina, but I've gone so long saying my name is Alena, I don't know if I'm going to try and tell people it's actually Alyona. I don't know if I want to do all that. It's pretty. It is pretty, for sure. We'll see. We'll see. What do you guys think? Do I reintroduce myself with the proper pronunciation of my name, or are we going to stick with Alina? I know it's not up to you guys. In the end, it's up to me, but I am curious your thoughts on that. Okay, so привет, меня зовут Alyona. Большое спасибо. Thank you very much. Пока-пока. Bye-bye. До свидания. Goodbye. What else do I know? I know пожалуйста, which means please. Or you can use it to say you're welcome. Пожалуйста. Ooh, I learned я понимаю, which means I understand. And I know пошли, let's go. That's what I know so far in Russian. It's been a lot of fun. I don't know a lot of words and phrases right now because I'm focusing on learning the Cyrillic alphabet, learning the phonetics of it all, and then putting that together. So I'm picking up on it really quickly, I'd say. I'm practicing reading and writing it as I learn it, so it's a little slower. All that to say, being adopted, I wouldn't change that. I think it's been amazing for me. It's weird to think about sometimes because a lot of times I go without thinking about it and then I stop and think, oh, I'm adopted. My life could have been so different. And people that aren't adopted, they just have a different viewpoint on life. It's just weird to think about. I will never have a different view on it because it's my situation. I'm adopted. It's wild to think about sometimes. Knowing that I'm adopted, I know that there is a purpose for me. Because of my story, it's given me my passion working with young kids, whether it's teaching, nannying, just anything to be a positive impact in that young age of a child's life. That's my passion. I think adoption is a wonderful thing, but I also think it can be a less wonderful thing without support. Like, in order for adoption to be great, it needs to be surrounded with support from adoptive parents, community, friends, extended family. You need open communication and transparency about it, and just support if the adoptee has questions, wants to look for their birth family, feels like they don't fit in. Like, you just need that support. It's kind of like with mental illness and therapy and medication. Like, it can all work together great, but it's not going to work as great if it's not as a unit. Kids with ADHD, yeah, medicine can help. You're only going to have a much better outcome if it's supplemented with ongoing therapy. It's not just the medication. It's kind of like that. I just want to say that, and that's why I'm so passionate right now about getting my story out there and getting all of this out to you guys, to fellow adoptees, to people that are just interested in adoption and what it means and what it entails and how adoptees feel. Listening to everybody's adoption story that you can, because every story is going to be different. No adoption story is the same as another's. I think it's a cool thing to be able to share your story through social media and the outlets we have nowadays. I can only imagine how people felt in the early 90s. I was too young to really think about it, but the older kids, I feel for them. All that to say, spasiba. I want to thank all of my new followers. I've gained quite a bit of followers in a short amount of time on my TikTok account, honoring my Kokoshnik. My episodes are available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and then if you are somebody that enjoys watching a video, I'm on YouTube. And I just want to, once again, thank everybody for your continued support, following, sharing, liking, reposting my content, because it's actually connecting me with adoptees. And it's amazing. So the more that my stuff gets shared, the more I'll be able to connect with you, fellow adoptees. And then just anybody that's interested in the adoption process, hearing adoption journeys, hearing stories, because it's so different here that a lot of people do have curiosity. I would love to find somebody that was in the same orphanage as me. So in Khabarovsk, Children's Home Number 1, 1994 to 1997, if there's anybody out there that was in that orphanage or children's home, please reach out to me. Please connect with me. I have so many questions. My questions really are, what was it like? What were the conditions? How were the younger children treated? Generally, though, kids were grouped with their age group. They weren't mixed ages. So I don't think I would get the answer to that. But it is definitely always nice to connect with people that are from Khabarovsk Not even from the same children's home, but just the same city is really cool. I've connected with a couple people, actually, so far from Khabarovsk, and it's been really cool. My next episode, episode 3, I'm gonna have a special guest come on, and I'm gonna ask her some questions. There's a cool bit of information that I'm gonna share about our connection. It's pretty wild. I'm excited for that. That'll be episode 3. Be sure to tune into that, and in the meantime, just continue with your support with your community, with your family and friends. Maybe try to have a conversation around adoption and see where it takes you, because there's a lot of good information. Everybody knows somebody that is in the world of adoption, I think. I don't think there's anybody that's listening that doesn't know somebody that's either been adopted, has adopted a child, or has dealt with somebody that is in the adoption community. It's all around. Let's talk about it. Thank you guys for listening today. I hope you have a wonderful week. I will see you or talk to you very soon. Do svidaniya.